Well, good evening. This is the Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting for Tuesday, June 22nd, 2021. Tonight, we're going to begin with an invocation. I'm going to ask Alderman Barnhill if he would offer the invocation, then I'll lead the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'll join me and stand.
Right, please. Heavenly Father, we come to you in prayer tonight, thanking you for this great nation that we live in, for all the many blessings and freedoms that we have. We offer your blessings and thanks to you for these blessings and freedoms that we do have and enjoy. We ask that you be with our national leaders, our state leaders. Be with us as we make decisions that affect the city of Franklin. We also ask a special blessing on the first responders that we have, on the military who are in foreign countries protecting our freedoms. All of this we ask in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If I could ask Angie a quick question. Are we to call roll now? Is that appropriate? So let's find out who's here. Alderman Barnhill.
Present.
Alderman Martin.
Present.
Alderman Schroer.
Here.
Alderman Speedy.
Here.
Alderman McGlendon.
Here.
Alderman Blanton.
Here.
Alderman Peterson.
Here.
And Vice Mayor Berger.
Here.
Everybody's here. Good. Now's an opportunity for citizens to make comments for items that are not on the agenda. As you may or may not be aware, our tradition is to fill out a speaker card if you plan on speaking to this body. This helps our recorders understand who you are and make sure they understand where you live and so on and so forth. So I have some speaker cards here. If there's any more, bring them to me immediately. Otherwise, I'll cut off that portion of the thing. So I don't see anybody coming up for items not on the agenda. I do have a communication relative to the Capital Investment Committee of, sure, thanks. I do have a communication regarding the Capital Investment Committee of June 24th at 3:30 p.m., which was listed. That meeting has been canceled for the month of June. The next item is I need to add an item to the agenda, and we'll do it just before item number 4 and after the consent agenda. And this has to do with Resolution 2021-92, a resolution to rescind a resolution establishing Liberty Hills Pond as a regional stormwater detention facility. What happened was this was supposed to be on this agenda and give public notice, and we failed to get it on there. So this will, I would ask that when we get to that this be deferred to July the 13th, 2021 BOMA meeting. So now we're going to go to the minutes, approval of minutes, and we're going to May the 25th work session and Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting, and June the 8th work session and Board of Mayor and Alderman. So I would entertain a motion to that effect.
So moved.
Thank you, Alderman Barnhill. Is there a second? Second, Alderman Blanton. Thank you. Any discussion, any other additions or comments? Seeing none, we're ready to vote. Alderman Barnhill.
Yes.
Alderman Martin.
Yes.
Alderman Schroer.
Yes.
Alderman Speedy.
Yes.
Alderman McGlendon.
Yes.
Alderman Blanton.
Yes.
Alderman Peterson.
Yes.
And Vice Mayor Berger.
Yes.
That passes unanimously. We'll now go to recognitions. Tonight we're blessed and fortunate to have our coalition of representative and senator from at the Tennessee General Assembly. It's always good to have you here, and for the audience, just a quick comment about how responsive they are whenever we as a city contact them. We have regular meetings with them and have great communications, and we're honored that they're all here in true force tonight. And so I think Senator Johnson is in charge, so we're going to recognize you, Senator Johnson. And the rest of the delegation, I would ask for, if you just go ahead and introduce all your everybody from the legislative delegation to make sure everybody knows who they are?
I will, Mayor Moore, and thank you, Mayor and Alderman. It's a pleasure to be with you this evening. I am Jack Johnson, State Senator for Williamson County, and I'm pleased to be joined with my colleagues from the State House, Representatives Glenn Cassada, Sam Whitson, and Brandon Ogles. And we're here tonight to pay honor and tribute to a friend of many in this room, former Mayor Tom Miller. And if it would be permissible, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to invite Miss Lydia to join us up here.
Absolutely, please do, and her
anyone that
family
she would
to
like
join her also.
to have join us up here at the podium, please.
We'd love for the family to join Lydia if they would, please.
Great, great. Just gather around. Sadly, Mayor, last year we lost former Mayor Tom Miller, who served as mayor of the city of Franklin from 2003 until 2007, and it was our honor to pass a resolution through the Tennessee General Assembly honoring his memory, and we'd like to present it to the family tonight. I won't read the entire resolution, Mayor, but I would like to say, or read the resolve clause here. Be it resolved by the Senate of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the House of Representatives concurring, that we honor the memory of Mayor Tom Miller, reflecting fondly upon his impeccable character and his stalwart commitment to living the examined life with courage and conviction. Be it further resolved that we express our sympathy and offer our condolences to the family of Mayor Miller. Signed, Governor Bill Lee. Mayor, would it be appropriate if we came up perhaps with you in the background and took a picture? Would that be okay?
We'd love that.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
Y'all, come on up here.
Go down there.
Yeah,
You go down here.
yeah, you go.
Sorry.
Don't need the board. You don't need the board.
Yes, ma'am.
You go.
Yeah, you go down.
Yeah. There we go. Hide me.
Are there any other miscellaneous reports? Seeing none, we'll continue on. Next are items on the consent agenda. All items on the consent agenda are deemed to be uncontroversial and routine in nature by the governing body. They will be approved as recommended by committee or staff by one motion of the governing body. We're considering items number 15 through 33 tonight. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Thank you, Alderman Blanton. Is there a second? Who's that, Alderman Martin? Thank you. Any discussion? Ready to vote? Alderman Barnhill.
Yes.
Alderman Martin.
Yes.
Alderman Schroer.
Yes.
Alderman Speedy.
Yes.
Alderman McClendon.
Yes.
Alderman Blanton.
Yes.
Alderman Peterson.
Yes.
And Vice Mayor.
Yes.
Passes unanimously. We'll now go to Resolution 2021-92, a resolution to rescind resolution establishing Liberty Hills Pond as a regional stormwater detention facility, and I would ask for a motion to defer that resolution to the July 13th, 2021 BOMA meeting so that adequate public notice can be made.
So move.
Thank you, Alderman Barnhill. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Alderman Peterson. Any discussion? Ready to vote? Alderman Barnhill.
Yes.
Alderman Martin.
Yes.
Alderman Schroer.
Yes.
Alderman Speedy.
Yes.
Alderman McClendon.
Yes.
Alderman Blanton.
Yes.
Alderman Peterson.
Yes.
And Vice Mayor Berger.
Yes.
Passes unanimously. We'll now go to item number 4. This is a public hearing, and it's consideration of ordinance 2020-36, an ordinance to rezone 35.36 acres from Plan District to Plan, I'm not going to read all those numbers, district for the property located south of Spencer Creek Road and north of Machatcher Parkway, located at 285 Spencer Creek Road, Cheekwood North PUD. Is there a motion?
Public hearing, sir.
Public hearing.
I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. Go ahead, Joey.
Good
I want to
evening.
look in the right direction.
Good evening. Due to a lack of lease agreement with the city, between the applicant and the city, staff recommends deferral of this item until the August 24th BOMA meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone want to speak to this body?
Yes, sir.
And I'll remind you that you're supposed to give us a speaker card, but if you'll state your name clearly so our recorder will be able to accurately record it.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Board, Mayor, and Alderman. I am Todd Jester. I'm representing the ownership group of Cheekwood Golf Club. We understand the staff's position and request to defer the votes on our rezoning and development plan submittals. We request this deferral, though, to be the soonest possible date. We also request to present additional information about our business operation plan on the July 13th work session. This additional information will be valuable to the aldermen as the board reviews the draft lease agreement in the coming weeks. Our ownership group is confident that we are very close to having a finalized lease agreement. We look forward to working with the board and all of you in putting this together. And I'm here for any questions should there be.
Anyone else wants to speak to this body? I declare the public hearing closed. And is there a motion?
I have a motion.
Alderman Schroer.
I move that we deny the request for the ordinance number 2020-36. And I will speak, if you give me a chance later on after the motion, I will speak on my reasons to do that.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Alderman Blanton.
Mr. Mayor, I'm going to recuse myself.
Okay,
Please.
thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Alderman Schroer.
If I may. Yeah, this project has been going on for a long, very, very, very long time. As a matter of fact, I can say that when I was the mayor of Franklin, sometime before 2011, that I had a conversation with some people to do something not similar, but to lease the property on the south side of Machatcher to add an additional 9-hole golf course to the existing 9-hole golf course. I left, and obviously that went away. And in 2017, a resolution was passed that was authorized the city administrator to pursue lease arrangements with the applicant at this point in time. And I will later on ask, if this motion is denied, to have a resolution that would stop any further negotiations with the Cheekwood Golf Course Group for this. You have been negotiating on this since 2017. It's now 2011. And contrary to what I hear, that we are so far apart in this lease negotiation and that we are not, there's just no opportunity to get together. And as an example, and we can read some of these things, but Cheekwood wants to have a daytime and nighttime golf course facility. Cheekwood wants to be able to use the golf course and the facilities for any type, nature or kind of activity. They don't want to have any limitation on hours. They want to have a 30-foot fence, and I can tell you that the apex of a driver, of a pretty quality golfer is about 125 feet, so 30 feet will not be sufficient. That's what we've asked them to do. They want to have lights, they want to have multiple story driving range. They want to have even lights in the, from what I understand, in the ground. And instead of having an 18-hole golf course or even an existing 9-hole executive golf course, they want to reduce it to a par 3 golf course, which is not at all what was started off with. I don't know whether the plans were to light that or not, and we have asked them many, many times to kind of differentiate themselves from a Top Golf. And at no point in time have they ever really done that. And if you all have driven on I-24 65 northbound off of Jefferson Street, you cannot miss Top Golf. Top Golf is not an opportunity to play golf, it's an opportunity to drink and have a party, quite frankly. I have been a golfer my whole life. I played golf in college. I understand what that's all about. This is just a great time to have a party, and we don't need to have a party with all the lights and everything going on inside Matt Catcher at this location. It really does the city no good to do that, and I think it's time that we just cut the lease negotiations off, and that everybody goes their separate way. I know that, and I have to commend the mayor and our attorney and several people involved in this, that they've worked very, very, very hard trying to get together on this project, and it seems like every time they do something, it comes back worse. And I will tell you that I've negotiated a lot of leases in my life, because that's kind of what I do for a living, and I've found out very quickly that leases that are hard to negotiate and don't ever get together never seem to end up in the right manner, and that there's always issues with them. This project, as it's designed and as they're talking about, does nothing for the city of Franklin. It just doesn't. It doesn't meet our requirements or standards. It doesn't meet the type of facilities that we would like to have. It is not to me, not the image that we would like to give to people who drive on Matt Catcher and see what's going on. If you drive down I-65 northbound, you see what it looks like. And it's just not what we need in the city of Franklin. So I would ask that you all vote in favor of denying the request to approve this ordinance. And I will tell you that if this is approved, well, whether it is or not, I will move to deny the further requests that go through from 4 to, I think, 7 or 8. And I will also then ask that the Board of Mayor and Aldermen have a resolution at next meeting that would rescind the original resolution 2017-72 that authorized Eric Stuckey to negotiate a contract with this particular party.
I think I understand your motion, and the motion is to deny the rezoning. I was a little confused on the draft to rescind or the resolution as far as rescinding the negotiations on the lease. That's your request, is that be brought up at the next board meeting on July the 13th?
That there be a resolution brought up at the next board meeting to deny the negotiation that rescinds resolution 2017-72.
Thank you. Thanks for the clarification. Other comments and questions? Alderman Barn, Alderman McClendon.
Mr. Barnhill had his hand up first.
I think John made one excellent point, and the point is the length of the time that it's taken. And in doing that, and referencing back to 2017 or 2018 or 2019 or whatever it has been, first off, you probably have had some COVID issues and stuff that have just maybe made it difficult for them to come forth. And I also think that they made some changes in the lease, which has been stuff that staff's worked through. Here's the two things. Number one, the applicant asked for a deferral on this till July the 13th. I think staff asked for a deferral on this till August 24th, right? For the length of time that the board has spent, for the length of time that we've spent on this, for the length of time that the applicant has spent on this, I don't have any problem in granting those deferrals. We're talking 3 weeks at the most on the applicant coming back with his proposal or his workings with the staff as far as the lease agreement is concerned. It may very well be that something that none of us will agree to, but I won't support the motion to deny this. I will support a motion to defer this until the 13th or the 24th, as staff has recommended. I'd prefer for it to be July the 13th for this to come back, but I won't support the other with the time and investment that's been put in by both staff and the applicant.
Go ahead, Alderman McClendon.
I'm going to respectfully speak against the motion to deny it right now, while acknowledging that I share many of Alderman Schroer's concerns. I'm not going to hold against somebody the length of time that it takes them to process the process. That's just, it doesn't help me know what the right thing to do, that it's been kind of languishing, but reasonable people might disagree about that. I'm not prepared to advance this either. So I'm going to support a deferral. And the reason I'm not prepared to advance this is because everything on our agenda is not a lease. And without a lease, none of this matters. And so I don't want to see any of this again until I have a lease in front of me that staff can at least present, even if they don't necessarily recommend it. I share Alderman Schroer's concern for what I consider to be, and I have said this consistently from the beginning, I'm not going to support what is a Topgolf if that's what it is. And, I've kind of jokingly said that I'm not sure how to tell you what exactly a Topgolf is, but I'll know it when I see it. And I want to leave open, I do want to see something at a work session, the applicant's presentation. But it appears to me that this wolf comes dressed as a wolf. I'm not going to support, on my way out, after 24 years of service, a destination for woohoo girls inside of Mac Hatcher. I'm just not going to do it. And I've said that from the beginning, so no one can be surprised by that. Now, is there a plan that the city could support, that the applicant can also make their investments in and make their investments work out? Possibly, but I haven't seen it. So I'm not going to vote against it just because it's frustrating to have not seen it. I'm not going to vote against it before the applicant has a fair opportunity to make their presentation. But I don't want to see any of this again until there's a lease attached to it. And having said that, I'm not going to waste any time on a lease if the rest of it is Topgolf. So that's my 2 cents. I'm going to vote respectfully against the motion to defeat it tonight. I'm going to support a deferral. I am curious why staff is asking that the deferral be into August as opposed to our next meeting. There may be a good reason.
Evening, Alderman. I can respond to the August 24th. We only have one meeting, first of all, in July. So that gives us approximately 3 weeks to redraft a lease agreement to put it, if we were going to try, on agenda in July. So we thought that we could take the month to get it on the first meeting in August, which would then put these items, which are the rezonings and public hearings for the second reading of the rezonings and the public hearing for the development plan, on the 24th with the lease that you looked at a work session. However, some of our staff thought that was a bit ambitious based on the last 4 years of where we were. So that's where the 24th came from.
Is there any reason we couldn't even if we didn't have something on the on the voting session, is there any reason we can't put at least some period of time on the work session for the applicant to, I guess I'll say, make their pitch? Because I think at this point, it's time, I do agree with Mr. Shore about this. One way or the other, this needs to be resolved with either a presentation that makes us all say, great, good, few details to iron out, let's do it, or something else. But my request would be to defeat the motion to deny it tonight, set it for a work session in July, and maybe the next step will then become self-evident.
If I may?
Go ahead.
As you said, and I tried to articulate, the details are in the lease. That the different revisions that we've seen on a plan have evolved over this 4-year period. And as you may remember, back late last year, during the last presentation, we had a resolution that required submittal of a development plan that we could react to, which we have, and it was submitted by the deadline on December 14th. However, from that date until now, we are quite a distance apart on the language in the lease that City Administrator Stuckey, Sean, and myself have worked on. So the 3 weeks likely isn't going to give us enough time to have a meaningful discussion and then have the respective attorneys put language in a lease that you can react to. So I would respectfully wait until we can come back the first meeting in August, let the applicant, if that's the direction you want to go, to have that lease completed to the satisfaction of the city administrator that he feels comfortable presenting to you.
Let me ask you this, when would we have to publish the July work session agenda?
Because we have an extra week, I do believe we have time to publish the work session agenda. We wouldn't be able to put the rezoning, the two rezonings and the two development plans on the July 13th.
No, I just want to know, I mean, I'm trying to process, I'm trying to give a due and fair process to the applicant here. There is a lot of time invested. That's not a great reason to do anything, but it is where we are. And I just want to, if we can meet the publication deadline for the work session, if there's something meaningful for us to see by the deadline, then I'd like for that to happen. And if not, and I say that doesn't mean that I necessarily expect or even would want it to be an ultimatum that staff be ready to say that they recommend it. Because sometimes staff recommends things and we say no, and sometimes staff doesn't recommend things and we say yes anyway. So I'm not asking the staff to be the gatekeeper for something that you're ready to recommend. I just want it on, if it's something we can see, or at the very least, if we can know, hey, here's the deal breakers that separate us. We're not prepared to recommend it, but we can at least identify the issues that divide us. If that can be if we can get 10, 15 minutes on the July work session, that may be all we need.
Okay, just to be clear, if I may, you're talking having a lease on that you could react to the language that is the current.
Yeah, because it's the lease where all the deal breakers do or don't exist, right?
Yes.
I mean, we're not going to be, the Board of Mayor and Alderman is not going to be in the business of locating a hole. We're in the business of saying yes to a lease, and the lease defines what the lessee can and cannot do, and that's where the real rubber meets the road here.
To answer your question regarding the due date, it's a week from tomorrow.
It's a week from tomorrow?
A week from tomorrow is the due date for staff to come on.
Okay, well, if this motion is defeated, then my request is going to be that if by a week from tomorrow, staff feels confident that there's at least enough identification of the issues, because if, we owe it to the applicant to say to them, if that is a must-have for you, that is a deal breaker for us, we're done. like, if, because the applicant no doubt has some deal breakers too. We should at least get to the point where Alderman Shore discussed that this isn't gonna work. I'm not sure we're there, but it seems like we can probably know that in a week.
Well, and I mean, if we have a lease agreement to present to you on the 13th, we will certainly bring that at the work session on July 13th.
Okay, well, if it's
And
on
we
the
will-
agenda,
we
great.
will we'll publish it, and if it's not ready, it won't be ready.
But at least the applicant should be there on the 13th to explain their proposal with whatever video they have, whatever drawings they have, whatever proposal they need to have. They need to be there on the 13th. If you haven't got the lease worked out, you can work the lease out for the second Tuesday in August. And you can then, if you need to, you can push, if the second Tuesday in August and the lease is not there, the rest of this stuff is of no use to us. I don't think. I think Alderman McClendon has hit on that. I don't necessarily see that I think it would be nice, but I don't necessarily see that we need to see a complete final lease. I want to hear what they've got to say, and they've seen your proposal to them as far as the lease is concerned. They should already know what the issues are as to what the holdup is in the lease, because they know what our side is, and we know what their side is. But they need to have an opportunity to at least present to the board on the 13th of July, on the work session. Now, if you can get a lease that you can present at that particular time in the work session or whatever it is, I'm fine with that too. But I'm not just absolutely hung up on a lease that both sides have agreed to be ready to go on the 13th of July.
I've got Alderman Speedy, then I'll recognize you, Alderman Martin.
Similar to Alderman Barnhill and McClendon, I can't support the denial. I want to see the presentation on the 13th, and I want to see, what issues there are in the lease that is a deal breaker for both people. I think we got to realize too, this is still Nicholas Design is involved in this, and the guy who's won the most majors ever, and I just don't think they're gonna. I want to see their business presentation. I don't see them building a Topgolf over there with Nicholas Design. I think that there is going to be some technology that we may not have seen in driving ranges that have been built in the last 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I mean, these are teaching bays and video and can further the game of golf. I think we can't be too afraid of the technology, because that's probably where golf is headed. So I won't be supporting the denial.
Alderman Martin.
When we first discussed this and agreed to it, we were really thrilled about adding to the golf course. It seemed to be the least obtrusive project we could have there. It was my understanding from talking to all of you that the main problem that we were having was mitigating the wetlands. I wanted to know what that meant, and you explained it to me. But I thought that was the main problem. But it seems that the whole scene has changed. And I have heard from many of the residences around town, not just the residents out there that we usually hear from, but around town, that this is not what we want, a big commercial setting in the middle of a residential neighborhood. And we're working with developments all around that. We're going to have a lot of developments of homes around there. And I think the lighting and all of that is going to really disturb the neighbors. So that's where I stand. I was for the golf course because I like golf courses. And they're pretty, and you were going to have it nice, but with all that you've told me about in the last time we've talked, I really had second thoughts about it, and I'm not sure that's what we want. Now, I know Alderman Schroer has detailed it, and I don't have to go into details for you, but I know we're talking about the lease now, but the lease will address some of these things. And it was my understanding that we were not going to be running that golf course day to day. You know, I don't want us to be in that business. But some of these things have to be addressed, and I hope you will take those things into consideration. But I feel like that I had to tell you where I stand on it, because I have changed. Thank you.
Alderman Blanton.
I mirror basically what Margaret said. I think for me in 2017, when we were given, for those of you who may not know the origin of this, we had this surplus land, as I'll refer to it, and we had 3 interested parties, one of which was our own housing commission with an affordable housing option, Discovery Place, which is a children's museum, and then also the expansion of the Cheekwood Golf Course. And you obviously rose to the top, which is why we've been working with you since 2017. But there's been so many different iterations of the plan, and it's so far removed from what we were basically, I would say, voted on to happen in that space. And it's gotten to be very confusing, very frustrating. Frustration, you probably win the title on the frustration, but I think you can't have any of these agenda items without the lease. It's like you're approving a development plan before somebody's even bought the property. So I don't know the chicken and the egg and which way the stance is going to work out, but I think that that's why I seconded Alderman Schroer's motion, because I feel like how long do we kick this can down the road before we've got to start all over at square one, because it's so far from where we made our first decision. And, you know, the Top Golf back and forth, I am not a golfer. I've never been to Top Golf. I have seen the plans or a version of the plans, and I've also seen the disparities between what we want in the contract and what your requests are for the contract. So it almost seems like to me, which is why I second that, it's better to just rip it up and start all over again, if that's even something that's a possibility. So I don't mind supporting the deferral, but I also don't mind. I think we're gonna not win here, but I don't mind either way. But I do want to explain that. I think we're so far removed from where we started, so.
Any other comments? Ready?
I'll just make one quick comment. I'm okay with the deferral. I mean, it's fine. I'm going to vote for my motion, which I'm supposed to do. But I totally agree with Alderman McClendon. There's no point looking at anything, plans or anything, unless we have a lease that we can agree to. I mean, that is number one priority. And from what I hear from staff, we're miles apart. And it keeps getting worse rather than better. And, you know, it seems like all of a sudden we're trying to be held hostage by the lessee, and we're the lessor, and we control what goes on there. We don't have to do this deal. There's no one's requiring us to do it. That piece of property is going to be there. It does have a huge wetland area. And Scott, I will tell you, I don't think Jack Nicklaus has ever designed a par 3 golf course in his life. And I agree with the technology, but the technology, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about 3-story hitting, we're talking about huge nets, we're talking about lighting on the fairway, we're talking about, if you've ever been to Top Golf at midnight, there's no one sober at Top Golf at midnight, and that they want to have unlimited hours of operation. That's part of their requirements. They want to be able to serve alcohol at any point in time, on or off the golf course. I mean, there's lots of things that just are giant red flags. So if they come back and say, okay, we're going to agree to your terms, then that's fine. But I'm not likely to vote for anything that even comes close to what I think this is going to look like. And I don't think that they have ever provided us with any information why we can't think that it is a Top Golf. And because I think at the end of the day, that's what they want to have, because that's the only way they can make money. And that this is a for-profit operation, and different than, let's say, the Little Course, which is not, and run by the Tennessee Golf Association, and they do things right. I just think this would be something that at the end of the day we would say, gosh, I'm really sorry we did that, but we couldn't take it back. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Ready to vote?
What are we
This-
voting for?
This is a motion to
outright.
deny the rezoning,
To deny?
deny the rezoning. Alderman Barnhill,
No.
Alderman Martin,
No.
Alderman Schroer.
Yes?
Alderman Speedy,
No.
Alderman McGlendon,
No.
Alderman Blanton,
Yes.
and Alderman Peterson.
No.
And the vice mayor is, what's the correct term I should use, Angie? She's recused herself. Gotcha. Okay.
Mayor, I have a motion.
Hang on just a second. So it fails 5-2. Or two votes for and 5 against, so it fails. So I'll recognize Alderman McClendon.
Mayor, I move that we defer all, I know we can't do it lock, stock, and barrel, but my motion now on this item will be repeated on others, that we defer the matter to the July, is it 12th? 13th work session.
You can't, it's a voting.
We can't defer it to the work session?
We'll have to defer it to the first August meeting so that the lease will go to work session on the 11th, or the
Okay.
14th. And then it follows 2 weeks later to the voting meeting where it would line up with these.
Okay, my motion is to defer this item, and when we get there, the others, to the August 10th voting session, with the intent that our July work session will include at least dueling banjos on the lease.
Is there a second? Who's that, Alderman Barnhill? Okay, any other discussion? Ready to vote? Everybody clear on what the motion is? Alderman Barnhill.
Yes.
Alderman Martin.
Yes.
Alderman Schroer.
Yes.
Alderman Speedy.
Yes.
Alderman McGlendon.
Yes.
Alderman Blanton.
Yes.
Alderman Peterson.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Burgers recused herself. Passes. Next is public hearing, consideration resolution 2020-298, a resolution approving a development plan for Cheekwood North PUD subdivision for the property located south of Spencer Creek and north of Mack-Hatcher Parkway located 285 Spencer Creek Road. Go ahead, Joey.
Good evening. For similar reasons as the previous item, staff recommends deferral to the August 24th Board Mayor and Alderman meeting. Thank you.
Does anyone want to speak to this body?
Requesting also to refer to the July 13th as well, as we did. It's the same statement as we did. It applies for all of our requests for deferrals to July 13th.
Thank you. Public hearing's closed. Seeing nobody else wanting to speak, is there a motion?
Mayor,
Thank you, Alderman. Go ahead.
move that we defer this item to the August 10th voting session.
Second.
Appropriate motion, second by Alderman Blanton. Any discussion? Everybody clear? Alderman Barnhill.
My question is this, the only thing that's coming up on the 13th of July is possibly their presentation of whatever, and a discussion of whatever, however far we've got in the lease agreement. Okay?
Yes.
Got it?
Okay, everybody clear? Ready to vote? Alderman Barnhill.
Yes.
Alderman Martin.
Yes.
Alderman Schroer.
Yes.
Alderman Speedy.
Yes.
Alderman McGlendon.
Yes.
Alderman Blanton.
Yes.
Alderman Peterson.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Berger recused herself. Passes. Next is item 6, City of Franklin Contract 2021-0059 Parkland Impact Fee, payment of fees only agreements for Cheekwood North PUD between the City of Franklin and Cheekwood Golf Club LP.
Mayor, I have a motion. It's not
Go
a
ahead.
public hearing?
No.
Okay. Motion that we defer this matter to the August 10th voting session.
Second.
Appropriate motion second. Any discussion? Ready to vote. Alderman Barnhill.
Yes.
Alderman Martin.
Yes.
Alderman Schroer.
Yes.
Alderman Speedy.
Yes.
Alderman McGlendon.
Yes.
Alderman Blanton.
Yes.
Alderman Peterson.
Yes.
And Vice Mayor recused herself, passes 7 with 1 recusal. Next is, this is a public hearing, consideration ordinance 2020-37, an ordinance to rezone 53.52 acres from CI to PD 58909 district for the property located west of Aldersgate Way and south of McHatcher Parkway, Cheekwood South PUD subdivision. Joey?
Thank you. Staff recommends deferral of this item to the August 24th Board and Alderman meeting. Save a bit of time. I'll go ahead and recommend deferral of the next item to the August 24th Board and Alderman meeting. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else want to speak to this body?
Again, Mr. Mayor, we'd like to also request for the presentation for the July 13th meeting as well. Thank you.
Todd,
sir.
I know who you are, but maybe the audience doesn't know who you are. so
Okay,
if you-
okay, yes, sir. He's saying, I'm Todd Jester, and I represent the Cheekwood Golf Course Ownership Group. Just a quick, yes, we have identified the rub item, so we could take care of that in about a 5-minute session. So, thank you.
5 minutes? Thank you.
Be careful what you ask for. Mayor, I have a motion and a comment.
The public hearing's closed. Go ahead with the public, with your motion.
Is the same, that we defer this to the August 10th. And if the staff and the applicant's running battle about which day we do this on is any indication, it's not looking good. They can't even see what's happening. None of them moving an inch. And I'm not mad at any of them, but staff keeps getting up talking about August 24th, and 3 times now we've passed it to the 10th, and the applicant keeps getting up saying, get it on the voting session for July 13th. So I think I'm getting a window into what's going on here.
Is there a second to, thank you, Alderman Blanton. Any other discussion? Ready to vote? Alderman Barnhill.
Yes.
Alderman Martin.
Yes.
Alderman Schroer.
Yes.
Alderman Speedy.
Yes.
Alderman McGlendon.
Yes.
Alderman Blanton. Alderman Peterson.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Burgers recused herself. It passes 7 with 1 recusal. Next is item 8. This is a public hearing. Consideration resolution 2020-299, a resolution approving a development plan for Cheekwood South PUD subdivision. And you don't have anything else to say, Joey, so does anybody else want to speak to this body concerning this item? If not, I'll declare the public hearing closed, entertain a motion.
Mayor, I have a motion.
Go ahead.
Move to defer this matter to August 10th.
Second.
Thank you, Alderman Barnhills. Any discussion? Ready to vote? Alderman Barnhill.
Yes.
Alderman Martin.
Yes.
Alderman Schroer.
Yes.
Alderman Speedy.
Yes.
Alderman McGlendon.
Yes.
Alderman Blanton. Alderman Peterson.
Yes.
And Alderman Berger recused herself. Passes 7 with 1 recusal. Next is item 9. This is a public hearing. Consideration ordinance 2021-09, an ordinance to rezone 28.91 acres from agricultural to neighborhood commercial for the property located south of Goose Creek Bypass and east of Goose Creek Drive. Joey?
Thank you. I do have some remarks here. So, Envision Franklin places this parcel in the neighborhood commercial design concept, which states that areas in this design concept contain a mix of active uses at key intersections that serve surrounding residential concentrations. These centers must be compatible with and contribute to neighborhood character and livability. Further states that buildings should engage and define the street edge with landscaping, pedestrian walkways, and street furnishings to allow for safe and comfortable movement of pedestrians. The proposed rezoning request is consistent with the recommendation of Envision Franklin. No corresponding site plan or development plan has been submitted for review at this time. In response to citizen concerns that were raised at the work session, we have additional information for you in the staff report about additional requirements for buffers and lighting that is part of the zoning ordinance, requirements of the zoning ordinance. As well as approval bodies for any sort of development on this property. Section 20 outlines which site plans rise to approval of the Planning Commission, and because there is a requirement for transition zones abutting residential lots, any sort of site plan for this property would be placed at or on a Planning Commission agenda for review and approval. As an additional project consideration, any development of this property shall require the realignment of Goose Creek Drive approximately 500 feet to line up with the signalized intersection of Goose Creek Bypass and Captain Freeman Parkway. So staff recommends approval of ordinance 2021-09. Happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Okay, I've got a couple of speakers. I've got Brian Davis, and then I have Jeff Rojak. So I'll give you each a couple of minutes. So welcome, Mr. Davis.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, Alderman. I appreciate the opportunity to be able to speak to you. My name is Brian Davis. I live at 115 Gosling Drive in Goose Creek Estates in Franklin, Tennessee. Lived there since 1998. Our subdivisions was developed in 1997 and completed in 1998. Our subdivision has been impacted the most by the development in the Goose Creek area. In fact, we're impacted on all four sides. We've been developed on two already. The third with South Brook on the west side has been planned. This is the last piece to actually know what's going to happen to our northern border. So we're not opposed to rezoning. We're just asking the board for some help with some considerations to go along with what the neighborhood commercial specifies to help us keep the quality of life that we've had. So we feel like as a neighborhood we've given as far as development goes. Our request is simply to get that help from the board. Some comment has been that a development plan in the future, if it's purchased and presented, would go to the Planning Commission. I understand that. And they would judge it against this ordinance and this zoning as written. As this zoning is written, it pushes all service entrance, it pushes all the parking as much as possible to the rear of the property, as it specifically states. I had sent out a packet on Friday and then again yesterday with some backup information. The previous growth plan that was put in place when Mayor Tom Miller actually was in office, even through 2011, listed that this area would have could have business, retail, and office along Goose Creek Bypass with a transitional zone along our border. I'm just asking for some help that some of the criteria that I had put in my correspondence be added as a consideration, just as the staff has added the consideration to realign Goose Creek Drive to a red light. Even that, I think, needs to have some kind of agreement with the neighborhood. Goose Creek Drive is not on city property at the moment. To realign that would cause a sharp increase in the curvature of that roadway to be able to make this work. So as they've added consideration, we'd like some considerations added, as we'd specified, to an additional width to the transition zone for the buffer, for a high and low canopy of that buffer, potential for a berm if we can get it, light pollution coming from the development crossing our line, but also light glare. So we're not staring. We've got 13 homes along that border, 20 homes within 500 foot of the border. And our neighbors don't need to be staring and shouldn't have to stare at the light glare from it, and also have dumpsters right up against us. I know there's some things in this ordinance as written, this zoning, that does address it, but it doesn't address everything. So if someone comes in with a plan in the future, they're going to be judged by the Planning Commission against that zoning as written. It's not going to come back to the board here. So we're just asking for some help to have these items listed and for some kind of transition. I think that overall in that first 75% depth of this property, that the neighborhood commercial probably works well. It's that last 25% along our border we're going to need some help with. And as we said, we've given a lot. We've got development on all four sides, and no other subdivision in the area does. So we're just asking for your help. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Jeff Rosiak. I'm from Gamble Design Collaborative, representing the applicant tonight. I understand there have been a couple of questions about a potential realignment of Goose Creek Drive. So I have a handout, if you all will humor me, just to kind of show potentially how that works. Has not been vetted with engineering staff, but it does meet local road standards and is potentially an alignment that could work to connect Goose Creek Drive to the light at Captain Freeman.
I think I gave you 2 minutes. I'm going to give you a little bit longer than 2, but has staff seen this?
Staff has seen this, yes. It has not been to DRT or been vetted, but
Okay,
they have.
keep
they have
going
seen it. And that's really all I had to say tonight. We intend to comply with the zoning standards and meet all of those requirements for light pollution, transitional zones, and we don't have a plan yet, but it's our intent to work with the neighbors and be good neighbors, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Have you met with Mr. Davis?
We have.
Okay, I'm going to declare the public hearing closed. Is there a motion?
Second.
For motion second, any discussion? Alderman Peterson.
It was brought up tonight, Goose Creek Drive is not inside the city limits of Franklin, is it?
What I am?
Goose Creek Drive is not inside the city limits of Franklin, is it? I don't think it is either.
Goose Creek Estates isn't.
Is not, so I don't think that part this Goose Creek Drive is either, but I'm just asking. It looks like it from that picture there that it's not.
Go ahead, Mr. Vergard.
Alderman Peterson, just so I understand the question correctly, you're asking if Goose Creek bypass.
No,
It-
I'm sorry, I'm sorry, Goose Creek Estates Drive.
Oh, Goose Creek Estates Drive.
Excuse me, I didn't make that
No,
clear.
no, I might have misheard. That's not no, that's not in the city. That's correct. That is not.
So I guess, just as a question, how can we require it to be moved?
So when and I know Paul's here and he may have a better memory than myself, but when the Berry Farms developments were in their, what I'll say is more infant stages, TDOT had went through and looked at access management to that area. Now that we're looking at access to manage vehicular traffic coming out onto Goose Creek Bypass, we want to limit the number of points of access, but we also want to make the drives that are there as safe as possible. And that's, until we see a site plan, will we be able to get into that level of detail with their civil engineers?
Alderman Barnhill.
I understand, but I don't understand why someone would object to having it moved to a signalized intersection, making it easier to get in and out. Probably some different turn lanes and whatever off Goose Creek. But now, this is not a surprise. I mean, I've seen this before in either a workshop or a joint conceptual workshop or something or other here. So this realignment is not necessarily something, to me, that's new. I thought it was a good idea that we did that and come to the signalized intersection, and you've got what is Captain Freeman Parkway and this right here lining up with Goose Creek, and you don't have two points of entry or exit off of Goose Creek. Now you have one for the two intersections there. So, I think it's probably maybe premature that we are looking, or maybe not looking at this, but talking about approving this. But that's not something that's I've certainly seen it before.
Well,
Go ahead, Alderman Martin.
today I was at Maplewood subdivision, and I noticed that is one entrance, and that has been aligned with even a driveway to the apartments across the street. And it seems that you would be on the lookout for the opportunity to do that. So that's a good thing.
If I could add too, as we look at this, once we get beyond this stage, is that the developer would pay for that realignment to a signalized intersection. We are very sensitive and conscientious to any neighborhood, whether they're in the city or county, regarding cross-connection, but this is access to a major right-of-way, and to make it safe and fluid for people entering and leaving developments and neighborhoods.
Any other questions or comments? Ready to vote? Alderman Barnhill.
Yes.
Alderman Martin.
Yes.
Alderman Schroer.
Yes.
Alderman Speedy.
Yes.
Alderman McClendon.
Yes.
Alderman Blanton.
Yes.
Alderman Peterson.
No.
And Vice Mayor Berger. Passes 6-2. Item number 10, this is a public hearing. Consideration ordinance 2021-07, ordinance to amend chapter 23 of the zoning ordinance of the city of Franklin to redefine substantial damage and substantial improvement related to cumulative time frame and market value. Are you going to speak to that, Mr. Girth, or?
Yeah. Good evening again. Shannon McCoy, who's our floodplain manager and zoning administrator, has had a case of laryngitis here for the last week or so. So instead of her, even though she feels well, instead of her struggling through this item that you've seen on multiple occasions, I'll be happy to respond to any questions that I know Planning Commission Chairman and Roger Lindsay will address. But there are two issues at hand here. One is how we determine the value of properties that we've discussed, and historically the city has used just the assessed value from the county assessor's office. We are asking and we support having the appraised value in determining the value of property, which then allows us to monitor how much is invested in a property before a home is raised, or a home is raised 3 feet above the 100-year floodplain level, or if it's a non-residential building, 1 foot above the 100-year floodplain level. The other question that has caused a little bit of question has been whether or not we increase or decrease the time frame for improvement from 10 years to 5 years. And we've received input from citizens. We have a lot of floodplain within the city of Franklin, but having the 5 years benchmark for people that are investing in their property would allow them to continue to reinvest in their property after 5 years of putting so much money or improvements into their residential or non-residential property. The 10-year makes it a little bit more difficult for property owners to invest in too much money in their property that could eventually or may be infected by a flood event. Hopefully I outlaid them both.
Okay, I've got a couple of speakers here. I've got Roger Lindsay and Patrick Baggett. Roger's the chairman of our planning commission.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the Board of Aldermen. My name is Roger Lindsay. I live at 401 Coachman Drive, which is in Fieldstone Farms. I am presently serving as chairman of the Franklin Planning Commission and also as chair of the Stormwater Appeals Board. Because of comments that I made at the April Planning Commission meeting, the Planning Commission voted unanimously to recommend to BOMA that the cumulative time frame for the declaration of substantial damage not be changed. I continue to feel strongly that the change should not be made because of what I would describe as unintended consequences. With a 5-year cumulative period associated with the declaration of substantial damage, an owner of a non-compliant structure would be permitted to invest an additional almost 50% of the value of the house in upgrades and additions every 5 years, without ever having to bring the structure into compliance with our current floodplain regulations. Every 5 years, the cumulative total rolls back to zero, and the investments can begin again. Where this hurts is often the owner of a flood-prone home will grow tired of repairing flood damage, no matter how great or small it may be, and in a hot real estate market, easily sells the property to what I refer to as a subsequent victim. Now, that's a person who will eventually become a flood victim. He just doesn't know it yet. They're probably still moving from California right now. In spite of real estate disclosure laws, it happens over and over again. I talk to someone almost on a weekly basis in Nashville that has bought a structure that they had no clue at one time had 6 or 8 feet of water in it. Ultimately, homes like this become candidates for buyout, and the increased value of the home from these continued investments, the addition of a master suite, the addition of a kitchen, that increased value then becomes the responsibility of the city of Franklin, perhaps, or of FEMA to cover the cost of providing relief from these repetitive events. In Nashville, we have bought and demolished more than 400 homes, and we have 100 more on our active list that we'd like to get. Say the owner wants to keep his home and would like to take advantage of the increased cost of compliance coverage that comes with a flood insurance policy. He could experience one or more minor events, but still be short of the 50% damage on a cumulative basis. Now, 2 things have to happen for a homeowner to be eligible for this ICC money. 1, the disaster has to be flood-related, and 2, he has to be declared to be substantially damaged. I've worked with several homeowners in Nashville recently who, oddly enough, were desperate to be declared substantially damaged in order to capitalize on the extra $30,000, up to $30,000, that's needed to cover, that's the amount of ICC funds that are attached to your flood premium, your flood policy, to cover the cost of elevating their home to prevent similar future damage. Shortening this cumulative period will certainly impact others in exactly the same way. In spite of the fact that FEMA has developed minimum standards for flood protection, FEMA is also an incredible proponent of higher standards to provide a greater level of flood protection for both life and property. I'm a full-time professional floodplain manager, and I absolutely believe that there's no real rationale that would justify changing this from a 10-year back to 5 years. Now, I know you all had questions at some of the first readings, or perhaps I'm prepared to answer questions if you have questions. Otherwise, that's my statement for tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Patrick Baggett. I'm at 422 Murfreesboro Road. I want to thank staff. This all started a few years back in the zoning rewrite when a couple of neighbors over in the Ewingville area, myself and others, we all got together and just looked. We were all looking at the zoning ordinance and what are our standards versus other cities and counties in relation to the city of Franklin's. And a few of these things came up, these 3 that you see here. And I commend staff for taking the time. COVID kind of hit us, and we had to do some virtual meetings. But this is a process that has taken over a year plus, 18 months, and staff was very accommodating to the citizen comments, and I think that is reflected in their recommendation. The rationale is that there was intense dialogue, and there was give and take, and there was mutual understanding between the staff and citizens, and I think that led to what you see here before. So I'd really appreciate if the Board Member Alderman would consider the staff recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, is anybody else going to speak to this body tonight? If not, I'm going to close the public hearing and entertain a motion. And if you'd specify what the motion exactly is saying, so there's no confusion. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve ordinance 2021-7, but I do have some questions.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Alderman Martin. Go ahead, Alderman Barnhill.
I'm interested in a few of the comments that were made as far as adding on to a house that's already been flooded. Would we provide a building permit for that? Vernon, it's already been flooded, it's in the flood zone, it's in the floodplain. So we would give a building permit then to add on additional to a house that's in the floodplain? Well, because I'm looking at the 10-year, 5 years, what I'm looking at.
As Roger Lindsay articulated, it's about the cumulative improvement that's going to be made to the property. And presently, we measure that in a 10-year period. So for example, if a house is worth $300,000 and they want to put an addition on, and I'm using real addition, that's worth $200,000, no, we would not give a permit. But if the home is worth $300,000 and they want to put an addition of $50,000 on it, and they would elevate that addition the proper height above the 100-year floodplain, then they wouldn't have met that 50% threshold in the 10-year period, then we would issue the permit.
But why would the 10-year versus 5-year, why would the 5-year hurt that you just described?
Okay, so if using my same scenario, if it's understandable, so if a property has had a flood event and they needed to repair the footprint of the house and that $300,000 home, they had to put $100,000 into it. And then a few years later, they wanted to put $100,000 addition onto it. We wouldn't allow them to put that $100,000 addition onto it because now they've exceeded that 50% threshold. And as Roger explained, which I'm near and dear to this subject more than most, is that reducing that 5-year period, because if that same person that I listened to scenario that repaired their home waited 6 years and came to us and wanted to put that $100,000 addition on, it's the time period starts over on year 6, so then we would issue the building permit. And what Roger had explained is that people would likely keep pouring money into their home, maybe sell it to an unsuspected homeowner, and then become flooded at some point in time, and then we're starting all over with that inconvenience.
Mayor.
I hope I was able to.
I think it's somewhat, but my question was this. You've got a 2,000 square foot house that's worth $300,000. And they come to you and they say, I want to add another 500 square feet. And it exceeds the 5-year or the 10-year. Why would you issue a building permit to make a house bigger than what it already is in the floodplain?
We wouldn't if it exceeds, it's about the value. We would not issue a permit if it exceeds, currently if it exceeds 50% of the accumulated value in the 10-year period. If we reduce it to 5-year period, then in year 6, we start over and they could do it, depending on the value of the improvement, whether it's an addition or whether it's an interior renovation.
I'm gonna yield the floor.
Alderman Martin, and then I'll get Alderman Peterson.
Roger, thank you so much. I think I understand what you're saying, and I appreciate you sharing it. I'm also thinking about the present homeowners. By requiring a present homeowner to spend an exorbitant amount to raise the house or do whatever he would do to bring it into the required location, you're penalizing the present owner to benefit someone moving from California later. And I'm against that. If I wanted to do that, if I wanted to put the money into my house and live in it, why shouldn't I be able to do that? And if somebody moves into that house, he's reaping the benefits of the person who has spent all that money to raise it 3 feet or 10 feet or whatever. I'm not really asking a question. I'm just telling you the way I feel about it. You can answer it if you want to.
Tell us how you feel.
Well, if I could, because what we're also adding here, to get to your point, it's almost a sort of a compromise, because we are recommending that we not only use the county assessor's assessed value, but allow a property owner to get an appraisal to determine the value of their property. And because we're so fortunate with the investment that's occurring in our community, property values are naturally increasing. So a property owner looking to make an investment could get an appraisal that's a more current market analysis of the value of their property, which in turn allows them to put more money into their property rather than using a somewhat dated assessed valuation of their property. Hopefully it helps.
Alderman Peterson?
Mr. Mayor, and Vernon, you may be able to respond to this also. What this says, if you do more than 50%, then you have to raise the entire house, not just your addition. But if you're putting on an addition, you still have to have it to comply with the 3 feet above. It's just that if you spend more than 50%, then you have to raise the entire building.
That is absolutely correct, because then, when it hits that 50% threshold, we want to bring the property into compliance. And you may have heard Roger emphasize a non-compliant home. The 50% thresholds allows us to bring a property into compliance, which elevates the first floor in a residential property 3 feet above the 100-year flood level, and non-residential properties 1 foot. So then we're talking differently. Now that property's into compliance, and these changes would not be applicable to that property.
Any other comments or questions? Alderman, Vice Mayor Berger?
Roger, thank you for your comments. I certainly understand that, but there is a bottom line here for me, and the saying is you can't fix stupid. Well, if people do this every single day, they buy houses and they go, oh, well, we were told no development would go next door, or we were told the foundation was okay, or we were told we were zoned for this school, or we were told, you name it. This happens every single day. We can't fix that. We'll never be able to fix that. So there's a problem here that I see. I'm not here to protect the unexpected homeowner who doesn't do their homework. It doesn't employ the right lawyer, doesn't employ the right real estate person. That's where I have to draw the line. I get what you're saying, and I understand it, and I respect that. I have a great deal of respect for what you said, because this is your industry. You work in it every day, and I have a lot of respect. But there's this other issue that is dangling over my head, and I don't get it. I think that, people have a right to do these things. They have a right to improve their homes. They also have a right to be smart. They have a right to be stupid. They have a right to do the right things, the wrong things. And I don't think it's government's responsibility to try to dictate that to these people. Patrick Baggett is sitting out there. He's a house. He is in the insurance business. I don't think you're going to be stupid, Patrick, and do something wrong to your home. But also, I've seen that house, and I know you'd have to raise it, and I'd be driving down the road going, what is that structure, if you had to raise it that much to get out of the floodplain? If you want to add on to it and do things that you want to protect your home and try to make it as flood-proof as possible, those things are smart. I think there's technology, there's things you can do today. A lot of people may not have that opportunity, they may not choose that way, but there's way too many things at play here, and I will support this as is. With all due respect, I get it, but I think there's another angle here that has to be given to the property owners for the people to make their own decisions in these things.
Any other comments or questions?
I've got to ask a question.
Go ahead, Alderman.
And so I haven't listened to these conversations for a long time, so I'm pleading a little ignorant, and I apologize. I really don't want to ask this question. But I get the 50%, and you got to, that I don't understand the 5-year and 10-year thing. I'm totally confused about that. So, I mean, in layman's terms, can you explain, because you're talking about values, I'm assuming, but I don't understand the difference between Y5, Y10, and what difference that makes.
If I may.
Please.
A very good question. Is that currently we don't allow more than 50% of the value of the property to be invested in a 10-year period. What this ordinance would do would reduce it from 10 years to 5 years, which means somebody could put 45% of the value in their property in the first 5 years, then on year 6, start all over again and put more value into their property. Yeah. So, and the property would still not be in compliance. And that's the risk that when we have areas that are prone to flooding and participate in national flood insurance, you start to incur more damage and impact on that flood insurance program.
Other comments or questions? Alderman McClendon.
We protect people from doing stupid things all the time. So that's hardly going to stop me now. But I do thank God for idiots every day, because otherwise I'd have to get an honest day job. That said, when I don't really understand something and a subject matter expert tells me what I need to know, I ignore the subject matter expert at my peril. And as far as I can tell, nobody in the room's qualifications to opine on this exceed Mr. Lindsay's. So I'm going to make the motion that the ordinance be amended to create a 10-year period under the substantial damage ordinance, under the substantial damage definition in 23.4.
I will second that.
Appropriate amendment and appropriate second. Discussion on the amendment to the original motion.
I will just say I hate this. I've been agreeing with Dana for a long time, and it's starting to bother me, but I totally agree. Mr. Lindsay, you know exactly what you're doing, and you are an expert on this, and I'm like Dana, I don't know enough about it to fall on either side, but I think you know more than anybody else in this room about it. I may be wrong, but I think for the time being, I will absolutely vote in favor of this amendment.
A discussion on the amendment. Who are you talking to? You want to be recognized, Vice Mayor? Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Well, I was just saying, you're saying you haven't been doing this for a while, so, I mean, you have the option to abstain if you want.
Yeah, I don't want to, though.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there.
I do know that.
Yeah.
I've been doing this a while.
Anybody else want to make a comment? You ready to vote on the amendment to the motion?
Staff's recommendation is for 5 years, is that correct?
Staff and all of the citizens of who have worked on this with staff, and the time that's been spent, all of that is 5 years.
But not the planning commission and, yes. And
The amendment to the original motion is to amend it to read 10 years for the substantial damage accumulation. Is that correct, Alderman McClendon? And the second was by Alderman Schroer. So any other questions or comments about the amendment? Go ahead, Alderman Peterson.
In hearing about what Nashville is doing, Metro, you know, they have already bought up 400 homes and have another 100 on their list. In the city of Franklin, how many homes have been bought?
I don't have that information in the floodway, but not 400, I can assure you.
I know, I mean, how many?
But there is, I mean, and of course, we're participating in the Corps of Engineers program to help property owners elevate about 20 or so
Would you say
homes.
less than a dozen haven't been bought in
Yeah,
the city of Franklin?
I'd have to check on.
Mr. Marsh, do you have
Just
that
Tom,
number?
Is there a number he's going to say that's going to change anyone's vote?
No, but I'm just,
Not
Okay.
exactly, but I know following the 2010 floods with the hazard mitigation grant program we participated in, we purchased 10 or 12 homes following that flood.
Okay, is there any other discussion pertinent to the amendment? Seeing none, we're ready to vote on the amendment to the original motion. Alderman Barnhill.
No.
Alderman Martin.
No.
Alderman Schroer.
Yes.
Alderman Speedy.
No.
Alderman McGlendon.
Yes.
Alderman Blanton.
No.
Alderman Peterson.
no.
And Vice Mayor.
No.
It fails, 6 to 2. Now we'll go back to the original motion.
Call the question.
Ready to vote. Alderman Barnhill.
Yes.
Alderman Martin.
Yes.
Alderman Schroer.
No.
Alderman Speedy.
Yes.
Alderman McGlendon.
Yes.
Alderman Blanton.
Yes.
Alderman Peterson.
Yes.
And Vice Mayor.
Yes.
Passes 7 to 1. We'll now go on to new business. Liquor license for HVD Ventures at the corner, doing business as the Corner Wine and Spirits. Is there a motion? Thank you, Alderman Blanton. Is there a
Second.
second? Who was that?
Second.
Thank you, Alderman McClendon. Any discussion? Ready to vote? Alderman Barnhill.
Yes.
Alderman Martin.
Yes.
Alderman Schroer.
Yes.
Alderman Speedy.
Yes.
Alderman McClendon.
Yes.
Alderman Blanton. Alderman Peterson.
Yes.
And Vice Mayor Berger.
Yes.
Passes unanimously. Item 12 is consideration procurement award to Heron Construction Company, Inc. of Etowah, Tennessee, in the total estimated amount of $3,882,000 for construction of a Southeast Basin Pilot Treatment Facility for the Water Management Department Sewer Impact Division and a reclaimed water booster pump station at the Red Wing Meadows subdivision for the Water Management Department Reclaimed General Division. Is there a motion?
So move.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Alderman McClendon. Any discussion?
Just one quick question. What's a pilot for the Southeast Basin Treatment Facility?
This is in consideration for studying a future wastewater plant or water reclamation facility in Southeast Franklin. Is that correct?
Correct.
But how big is it going to be?
So this will fit on the Red Wing Pump Station site within our property boundaries that we have. We'll have to increase the fence line, but it will stay within the parcel that we own.
So we're going to put a pilot?
So the pilot will be just, it's a smaller scale treatment facility, and what will happen is that will be testing some of the advanced technologies to look at our different reuse options that we have for the effluent.
Okay. because we never have actually voted on the southeast basin, have we? Treatment,
A new treatment facility?
right.
No, you have not. We actually have a special work session that's going to be scheduled in August to go over those alternatives.
Thank you.
Any other discussion, any other comments? Ready to vote. Alderman Barnhill.
Yes.
Alderman Martin.
Yes.
Alderman Shore.
Yes.
Alderman Speedy.
Yes.
Alderman McClendon.
Yes.
Alderman Blanton. Alderman Peterson.
Yes.
And Vice Mayor Berger. Passes unanimously. Item number 13 is reappointment of Chuck Barber and Eric McElroy to the Franklin Transit Authority. Is there a motion? Thank you. Is that a second by Alderman Martin? And the motion was by Alderman Blanton. Ready to vote? Alderman Barnhill.
Yes.
Alderman Martin.
Yes.
Alderman Schroer.
Yes.
Alderman Speedy.
Yes.
Alderman McClendon.
Yes.
Alderman Blanton. Alderman Peterson.
Yes.
Vice Mayor? Passes unanimously. Item 14 is reappointment of Mayor Ken Moore and Eric Stuckey to the Williamson County Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Am I allowed to vote on that since we're on the board together?
You just need the public statements, you're on the board.
I'm also.
I move approval.
Second.
There you go.
And I seconded.
And who seconded? Alderman Peterson did. Great. Any discussion? Ready to vote? Alderman Barnhill.
Yes.
Alderman Martin.
Yes.
Alderman Schroer.
Yes.
Alderman Speedy.
Yes.
Alderman McClendon.
Yes.
Alderman Blanton.
Yes.
Alderman Peterson.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Berger. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously.